I haven't sat for 30 minutes in a couple of weeks. Like, wow, this feels like a long time. Feel like a long time to sit. I mentioned at the beginning about the form and formlessness. In a form-based sense, in that principle, then yeah, there's 30 minutes and there's a ticking of the clock and there's 5 minutes and 10 minutes and a passing of time and a feeling of long or short or in between. And from the other aspect, it's no time at all. It's somewhat irrelevant, the hands on the clock, or how much time passes, and we can really taste that in meditation. To really realize that more timeless quality when we're content. Master Dogen, Zen teacher, talked about meditation as self-fulfilling samadhi. Samadhi is a word that perhaps we could translate as concentrated absorption in the present. So self-fulfilling concentrated absorption. Sometimes we really access or realize that in our sitting, where things are fine just as they are, and it really doesn't matter how long is gone or how long is left or what the time is. There's a contentedness with just sitting. And the body mind, uh, enjoys, benefits, and appreciates the practice of sitting. I found that to be true. I may not, the me identity, may have all kinds of arguments with meditation, problems with meditation, and commentary about meditation. Right? But once we surrender that sense of me and what I think about meditation, and rather just allow the body to sit, allow the mind to sit, then naturally the awareness that we are aligns and is absorbed in a broader awareness that everything else is too. And then the natural expression of that is peacefulness and a contentedness with being just so. Just so. I brought up at the beginning just a couple of things about the key teachings or key insights of the Buddha. Buddha lived an extraordinary life, of course, but if we fast forward all the way to the part where he's sitting under the Bodhi tree, it said that he approached that meditation with really nothing left but a great resolve to sit and to realize his nature, to go beyond, to answer his questions, the drive to realize, brought him to that point of still sitting and to sit with immovably. In the tradition, sometimes it's said that he sat for a week. Here at Yokoji, we just had the week-long retreat, had a 7-day retreat, and that is traces its way all the way back to the Buddha's practice and the sitting for 7 days. Right? So it's said that when the Buddha opened his eyes and attained enlightenment or realization upon seeing the morning star, that he felt like he couldn't share it wasn't possible to share that enlightenment or that realization, that there was no way really to put it into words or to communicate that experience. And he'd been abandoned at that time by said that he'd had several followers, because he was a really accomplished ascetic master and meditation master, but he'd been abandoned by his followers after eating some rice and milk, which they saw really he was slipping, and they abandoned him. But it said that when he encountered his former followers after his enlightenment experience, then immediately there was a changed appearance and a changed presence in the Buddha's demeanor that was very obvious, and they saw that something had happened. Sometimes we meet people who have that great immovable presence, that really shining light of presence, and you can really just feel it to be in their presence. You know, it said that the Buddha shone very clearly with that expression of presence and enlightenment. I wanted to bring up a koan from the Zen tradition today that has a short story about the Buddha. This is from the Zen collection called the Book of Equanimity. This is from Case 4, the world honored one, that's the Buddha, that's you, points to the earth. And there's a preface, which I'll read first. When a speck of dust is raised, the great earth is fully contained in it. It's very well to open new territory and extend your lands with horse and spear. But who is the person who can be master in any place and meet the source in everything? Okay, so now the main case, attention. When the Buddha was walking with his disciples, he pointed to the ground and said, "It would be good to build a temple here." The god Indra took a blade of grass and stuck it in the ground and said, "The temple has been built." The world-honored one, the Buddha, then smiled faintly. There's a appreciatory verse that goes along with this case. Perhaps I'll read that too. On the 100 grass tips there's boundless spring. Taking what's at hand, use it freely. Buddha's 16-foot golden body of manifold merit, spontaneously extending a hand, enters the red dust. Within the dust he can be the host. Coming from another world, naturally he's a guest. Wherever you are, be content with your role. Dislike not those more adept than you. Okay, so that's our appreciatory verse for the koan case. The koans are often structured in this way: a preface or a pointer, the main gist of it, the main case, and then a verse that a classic, a poem about the main meaning of the case. Here we have the Buddha walking with some students, right? After his former followers became his signed on again for another term after his enlightenment, decided, okay, yeah, we'll give it another shot, and that community grew. That community grew in that time in northern India, and the first rules for Buddhist monks and the sangha in the community started to come in and to take effect. It said at that time that they would wander from place to place, and they would beg for food. The practice of that still continues in some cultures, in some countries today in Buddhist culture. So, and they would move from place to place in order not to, you kind of outstay your welcome if you come around every day asking for something. So that's one thing, in order not to overtax the resources of the villages and small towns of the day, then they would move around from place to place. Practice meditation, the Buddha would teach. They formulated the precepts, the guides for ethical conduct, and they began a community. I was looking back a little earlier into if we have meditation as refuge on a Tuesday night, which of course began at Michael's house some years ago, and I look back and I saw that I was doing some classes there a bit more than 10 years ago, and I know it's longer than that, but I remember going back and that's as far back as that email account goes. right? So it's like then I kind of switched email accounts. So it's like at least 10 years or so, probably more like 12 or 13. And then ICD, if we look back to the founding of that, for which some people who are still active in the sangha and the community were around at the very beginning. You know, led by Larry Yang and others, of course. I won't mention names because then I'll likely leave somebody out, and I don't want to do that. But down through the years, many hands, many eyes, many open hearts have worked and shared and given together in order to create a community where people can come together to practice. To practice what? You know, to practice what we've been practicing already today. A very simple but profound practice, gathering in community, cultivating stillness and awareness. Letting go of difficulty, letting go of the endless thoughts and interpretations around things, and returning to a more natural being, a being that is aligned with just this peaceful or quiet Sunday afternoon, wherever you're experiencing this. Right? It's an extraordinary thing that we gathered together in the year, in spring 2023, after everyone has been through so much for so long, so many different ways. So yet we can gather together in our Zoom room and engage in the practice of meditation. Not so different than the Buddha's day. In the koan, it said he's walking with some students, so there were some people who felt like he had something useful to say, something useful to share. You know, really the role of a so, you know, if we say a Dharma teacher or somebody who shares words in that way, is really just somebody who has run the bases and walked the path. Probably perhaps walked on a little ways ahead, mapped the territory, turned down all the one-way streets, ran into all the blind alleys, you know, fell into all of the holes with a manhole cover missing, all of the spiritual pitfalls that you can go into over 10, 20, 30 years, and just keeps going. And then perhaps, you know, after some time, can report, but can say a few things, a few words of encouragement and support. You know, in my own practice and in my own teaching, I realize that most of it of working with people is really that we practice together and you show up. That's most of it. It's the actual showing up and you know, knocking shoulders and seeing one another. And that way, through difficult times, through ups and downs, sometimes you have energy and vigor and enthusiasm for practice. Other times it's not that way. You can barely kind of drag yourself to a meditation meeting. You know, but through all of the ups and downs and the changing forms of our life, you know, the heart of a Dharma practitioner is the heart of somebody who brings their presence and shows up for everyone else. You know, at the beginning of practice, it feels more of perhaps a self-centered endeavor. It's like, what can the Dharma do for me? You know, but that with practice and with time turns into, how can this one here serve the wider manifestation of the community? How can this one help and support others? And it's a reciprocal relationship. So the Buddha is walking with these students, and he points to the ground and says, "It'd be good to erect a temple here." So you can imagine this perhaps walking in some, you know, little hilly territory. Maybe it's spring. Maybe you find somewhere, you know, there's a good water source, right? That would be important, especially in those days, right? So you'd want to have water nearby, maybe a town close by a dwelling, not too close. You don't want to be too close when you're building a practice community, maybe, right? But just like close enough where people can commute, where people could come in, right? So there's some things that need to come into place there. Says it's nice to build a temple here. Somebody thought that about Yokoji. Well, they didn't really know what was going to happen with the environmental challenges. Right, it's a beautiful here in the mountains and the Lake Hemet down below, and it's set up nicely, but it's not probably not in the best position geographically. Has some difficulties, but somebody at some point decided it would be good to build a temple here. Yeah. Again, Larry and Ian and many others decided in the desert some years ago. It would be good to build a temple here. This would be a good place to start a sangha and a community. But it's no small thing to do something like that. It says the god Indra appears in this tale. So we could take this tale as like more of a legendary tale of a Buddha or more of an apocryphal tale, perhaps. It says that the Buddha appears and sticks a blade of grass in the ground, single blade of grass, and says, the temple is built. The temple is built. Just like that. Done. No permits required, no horrible back and forth with the city for about 5 years. No, you know, have to worry about lease agreements or air conditioning or where people are going to park. You know, are we going to do a Dharma-based model? Are we going to do a fee-based model? None of these things come in at that point. Just Indra just decides, here we go, the temple is built. How is that so? Can he say that? Is that so? You know, again, it like brought up at the beginning, if we look at life, the principle of reality, through these two different lenses, through the relative lens, the realm of thought, the form, then it's not so easy to create a practice space or a community. 1001 logistics, right? And 990 out of those 1001 logistics, I think Adrian was juggling for a few years there, right? Many different logistics to keep things going, just to create a space so that we can invite people to meet and we can support one another. In the way of form, in the relative sense, there's a lot of work. We also talked about this formless sense. This is much more where the god Indra, of course, he's probably much more quite realized in the formless realms, you know, can understand, hopefully has a pretty good understanding. The temple is everywhere. Our community is everywhere. It's not dependent on a place. We're meeting here in a way which would not have been possible even just a few years ago. Right? COVID gave us that great shunt into the digital age that many of us who would have just, you know, held back from ever coming to a Zoom meeting or joining online for meditation, you know, were just pushed into that by the movement of events. So we found a temple here. Where is this temple that we're meeting in right now? Where is this community? Doesn't really exist in a place that you can point to in one sense, like a physical location, but it exists right here. It exists in the heart and the mind of each one of us. Everyone gathered together right now. What makes a temple after all? You know, we look at a temple. Soon we'll go to the Mizell Center. We have a half day coming there, right? We might go to Center of Spiritual Living for another class. Maybe we're looking into that too. These are also temples, Or is a temple, a sacred place? Or a place that's been elevated, that's held up as a place that this is of real value. This is a place to be where we bring our best, where we treat one another with respect and value, right? Where we elevate the most positive aspects, where we foster loving intention, friendliness, and kindness. That temple exists everywhere, whether it's literally at a church or a space or a temple, or again, it's the temple of your living room, the temple of your front yard. The Buddha walking around there, Indra says, it's built. There's not a place where practice doesn't take place. There's no difference between the secular and the sacred realms. It's always this now, always this place right here. How we take that, how we value that, that's up to us. Maybe we walk into some places. Can you walk into the DMV and appreciate it as a temple? That's advanced practice, right? Sorry. I don't mean to pick on the DMV in particular. I've never, I've had pretty positive experiences there, and I'm conscious somebody may work in the DMV. I don't want to offend anybody, but it's a popular trope to take it that might be a difficult space. But in our relative way of looking at things, we elevate some places and say, yeah, this is a special place, right? This is a place where practice can occur. This is a sacred space. And then other spaces, no, they're not held in that way. This is an uncomfortable place, or a place that I don't value. But those are always relative judgments and relative concepts. Intrinsically, wherever we wander, wherever we are, it's up to us for how we grace and how we raise up the value of the place that we stand, the place that we are. So the god Indra takes a blade of grass and sticks it in the ground and says the temple has been erected. The Buddha smiled faintly. Now, that's an interesting line. Why would the Buddha, he smiled faintly. That's something of a koan in itself. The Buddha didn't burst out laughing and clap Indra on the back and say, yeah, good one, or he didn't get upset with him, but he just smiled faintly. Those of us and many of us here who've been involved in crafting or building or supporting and now maintaining a community and perhaps understand that faint smile, right? That the temple is built. There's a comment by a Zen master a century later who said, and his comment was, hold on, let me find it. It's a good one. Oh yeah, repairs won't be easy. That's a comment from a lot later by another Zen master on this temple has already been built. Repairs won't be easy. Can I look around? A little earlier today, Yushin pointed out to me that the kind of a faucet and the sink was leaking a little bit. And I'm like, oh no, I'll have a look, and it's getting old and it's getting like worn out, and the seal started to go, and some water starting to pool in there, and it's like, okay, I'll put it on the list. I've got a piece of paper with like house improvement kind of chores, and I'm very slow at moving through that. One of them's been on there for about 2 years, but it's I'm like, all right, it's going on the list. Time to gotta put a new faucet in. In the realm of form, in the world of things, all things are breaking, things need fixing, always replacing, always taking care. finding new things that need to be done. It never stops. The Buddha smiles faintly. It's always a lot of work. But it's good work. It's good work. Caring for a community, an intentional community, and maintaining an intentional community where people can take part in the radical art of sitting down and being quiet for a period of time. That's good work, well worth doing. Or I've felt so these many years. And after being out for a couple of weeks and being quite sick and then returning, I was thinking earlier, I was actually looking forward to sitting. I don't often look forward to sitting. I've got about 100,000 hours, or something, and it's just like in many ways I don't want to do any more sitting. But I found myself like looking forward to it today, and it struck me, well, I could sit any time. I don't need a meeting to do meditation. I don't need other people in order to practice. And yeah, I do. Intrinsically, I may not, but relatively, I do. I do. It's good to know that at 4:30, okay, 4:30, I'm going to be, just a little before booting up the computer, getting set, taking down the bell from the shelf, filling a glass of water, and grabbing a cushion. Again, so that we can, there's so much that you can be said about meditation, 1,000 words, 10,000 words, 100,000 talks. But the realization we find is yours alone. Your practice is yours alone, but it belongs to the whole world. Just like there's each distinct blade of grass in the field is different, is unique, and yet sits in a whole field. So for us, our lives, unique, different, but we share the same root, the root of this profound and mysterious awareness, this very life that we are. And our meetings help remind us of our true home, a place of stillness, a place of awareness. When we sit in this way, when we practice in this way, for that period of time at least, you're a Buddha. So thank you for sitting alongside me and with me. I appreciate it. And I'd like to open it up if anyone has any question, a comment, anything that you'd like to ask or share, say. And if you don't usually say something, maybe today's the day.